Hey, I'm Pusher, and this is a Music Minute breakdown of Strangers by Sigrid. If you haven't heard of her, Sigrid is a pop singer from Norway, and Strangers is one of a small collection of songs that she's released so far, and one of my personal favorites. She first achieved international success with the single Don't Kill My Vibe in early 2017, and Strangers, having come out at the end of 2017, has already racked up tens of millions of plays online, pushing her to some pretty amazing early career heights. Just in the last year, she's played the Glastonbury Festival and the James Corden and Graham Norton shows. Now, in January of 2018, she won the BBC Music Sound of 2018 award, joining the likes of Adele, Sam Smith, and Ellie Goulding. Okay, this song is awesome. There is a tremendous energy all the way through this song. The lyrics and melodies are hooky and memorable, and there's actually a lot about it that strikes me as pretty unconventional for pop writing. And when Sigrid is at her best, the songs are like overflowing with well-conceived and executed ideas. Anyway, there's a lot to look at here, so let's dive in. Starting with the global information, the song is at 115 BPM, just a little bit slower than house, but still has a 4 on the floor feel. It's in D major, and everything in the song is diatonic. It's in 4/4. The song runs 3 minutes and 54 seconds, and it's 109 bars long. Next, let's take a look at the instrumentation. But before we do, this is where things really start to get interesting. In the songs that we've analyzed so far, Finesse and One Night, there were 24 and 22 different sounds used. So it looks like we're starting to see a pattern forming of pop instrumentation containing instruments numbering somewhere in the low 20s. But with the Sigrid song, we have 37 different sounds. Now, it might sound just from this that the song will be chaotic or have too much stuff happening in it or sound cluttered, but it actually brings us to the big overarching theme for this breakdown video. And that theme is opportunism. Opportunism is defined as the taking of opportunities as and when they arise, regardless of planning or principle. So in some pop songs, it seems like a typical formula is dictating a lot of the decisions that are made as to where sounds should go and where variations should be and the form of the song. But this song seems to take a lot more liberties with that. There are many sounds in this song that seem to follow no particular pattern and only seem to happen once or twice in the entire song as they're needed, and they never return again, even in parallel sections. So if it happens in the first verse, it won't happen in the second verse, or if it happens in the first chorus, it won't happen in the second or third choruses. That said, when you listen to some songs, you notice that a section only happens one time. There are a lot of Beatles songs, for example, where the middle 8 is like the sweetest part of the song, but with this song, before I did my critical analysis, I wasn't really noticing it so much. Everything is still chosen carefully to make the song feel stronger overall. And so while you may not necessarily notice that the tom roll only happens in one section towards the end of the song, when it does happen, it sort of flies under your conscious radar and adds to the song. So with all that said, in the instrument list this time, I've included asterisks next to some of the instrument names. And these indicate sounds that only happen once or twice throughout the entire song. In this instrument list, there are 19 sounds that occur regularly throughout the song, and there are 18 sounds that only happen once or twice in the whole song. So in the vocals, we've got Sigrid's main line, we've got harmonies that occasionally happen above them, and I've called the post-chorus vocals wide and dry because they're panned wide and have no reverb on them. In the effects department, we have 7 different sounds. The first 4 are like percussive or impact sounds. The printer is like a rhythmic sound effect that sounds like a printer printing on paper. And similar to the vinyl crackle in Muramasa's One Night, this printer sound only happens in the beginning sections to add a layer of weirdness and rhythm, and then we have white noise and pitch risers that happen throughout the song. This song has 3 lead sounds. There's a falling run that happens in the bridge in Act 3. It's sort of halfway used as an effect, but because it's got a discernible melody, I included it as a lead. There's a bell arpeggio that acts in a similar way to the harp in Muramasa's One Night. It's almost used as more of a riser or filler to elevate a section and make it feel bigger. And then there's this bell and reverb lead that's used in the verses. This is the only one that you would really consider to be a strong melody in the song, but it doesn't clash with the vocal because it actually doubles exactly what's being sung in the vocal.
Just like in the movies.
There are 4 sounds that handle the chords. Off the top, there's this soft, phasey, unison doubled, low-pass sound. In the pre-chorus, there's a piano. This sound only happens once in the song. In the drops is sort of like a variation on the soft, phasey chord that has like a 16th note stabbing LFO on it. This is like the sound of the song. And then in the bridge, which is sort of like a pre-chorus, we have this super soft. It reminds me of the big chords at the beginning of Madeon's Icarus. Now there are 7 different bass sounds that I could discern, but I probably could have condensed this into 1 or 2. But each one of these bass sounds has a different role, and so I just wanted to break them up. There are 5 variations on a sub and 2 variations on a low mid bass. And then there's an assortment of drums. There's a cymbal crash that often has a swell rolling up into it. There's the occasional open hi-hat. There's of course a closed hi-hat rhythm. And then there's a faster 16th note hi-hat for more intensity in some sections. There are 5 variations on the snare, and these are all used in different sections for different intensities or rhythmic patterns. There are toms that happen in 1 bar towards the end of the song. And then there are 3 different kicks. There's a soft kick that happens off the start. There's an alternate kick that happens between soft kicks. And it actually subtly introduces the 16th note feel in the low end of the song,
just like in the movies,
which sets you up for a 16th note drop. And then once we get to the first chorus, we switch out those kicks and we opt for like a heavier, more deep house style kick.
memories and
It's got a lot more high-end click on it, and that's the kick we use for the rest of the song. Now let's look at the form of the song. In a fairly regular pop fashion, the song can be divided into 3 major acts. Act 1 is pretty typical: 4-bar intro, 16-bar verse, 8-bar pre-chorus, 8-bar chorus, and then a 1-bar break after the chorus, just to sort of give you pause before the next act starts up. So on the surface, this looks pretty typical, but the pre-chorus in Act 1 is actually pretty interesting, because it's actually the same melody and chords as the drop. You would think that this would steal the thunder and the surprise of the impending chorus. And I think it works really, really well because the arrangement of the verse and the pre-chorus is so very different from the arrangement of the chorus that it feels like a new section when it happens, and it doesn't feel like it's been revealed at all just because the melody and chords have already happened once in the pre-chorus. It's very cool. And then we move on to Act 2, which of course starts with the second verse. Normally you might expect to see a pre-chorus here, but instead we just go straight into the chorus. There's really no need to do a pre-chorus again because we've already heard the sound of the chorus, so we just go right into it, and it keeps the intensity up. And then to make the section the same length, they've added a post-chorus, which is arranged the same as the chorus, but we've got an entirely new vocal hook where the vocals are panned out to the sides, they've got no reverb on them, and they're doing a much faster 16th note based rhythm. And then we get to Act 3, but this is sort of interesting as well. Normally you might expect a big change for the bridge, but this bridge is actually really similar to the post-chorus and the chorus that happened right before it, and so it feels like a continuation of Act 2, even though it's definitely a new section entirely.
I don't want you, all you want is someone going home together to forget we're alone. You and I, 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 you and I. Not like in the movies.
What's interesting though is in the pre-chorus that follows it, we do get a very down, low intensity section where we have the least instrumentation that we've had so far anywhere in the song.
Strangers, perfect pretenders. We're falling.
So it's like these two sections are working together to provide different aspects of what you expect in a bridge. And then in the second half of the third pre-chorus, we get these big Madeon-style electro house chords. And that wraps up the intensity in a big way for our big finale, where we have our chorus, our post-chorus, and our outro section. And of course, these sections, as the big outro, combine a lot of different aspects of different sections of the song. Okay, let's look at the chord progressions. Like I said, everything's in D major and everything's diatonic. Now, there are actually 3 different chord progressions that happen in this song. And at the bottom of our form arrangement, I've included a line of chord progressions which are color-coded just to show where the same chord progressions are happening in the song. The first chord progression is pretty typical pop. You have a D major, F sharp minor, B minor, and A, which is in the key of D is 1, 3, 6, 5.
Just like in the movies, it starts to rain and we.
Now this first chord progression happens in our verses, but there's actually another chord progression that happens in the verse as well. We have G, A, B minor, and A over C sharp, which in the key of D is 4, 5, 6, and then 5 again, but this time over the leading tone to lead us back up to the D.
When the curtain drops, our touch is just a touch.
Now each of these first 2 chord progressions is 4 bars long, and in the verse, the first chord progression happens twice, the second one happens once, and then we go back to the first one again. It creates sort of an A-A-B-A form to the chord progression. This happens in both verses, but it's also used as foreshadowing, because in the pre-chorus in Act 3, the chord progression is changed up, and we actually use that second chord progression all on its own. So it's an interesting way to, in the verses, have some contrast in the chord progression, but also foreshadow a chord progression that's going to be happening later in the song. And then in all the other sections of the song, we have this third chord progression, which is mostly focused on a rising bass line and has chords harmonizing over top of that. Now, this rising chord progression, to me, sounds really uplifting, really victorious, and it's actually a lot more interesting than a lot of the chord progressions I've seen in pop music lately.
Strangers, perfect pretenders.
So, hats off to Team Sigrid. Sort of subversive music theory. I like it. Now let's talk about the melody. Pretty much the whole melody is very, very D major pentatonic, which is typical of pop music. It goes a little outside though, and C sharp, the leading tone, is actually used as a pretty prominent melody note in a few sections. The cool thing about having a pentatonic melody is the ways that you can harmonize underneath it. It allows you to take sections of the melody and move them around and harmonize them in different ways. So you'll notice that the first two bars of the verses
Just like in the movies.
are actually the same melody as the last two bars of the bridge, even though it's harmonized differently.
Not like in the movies.
Which is an interesting way to tie different aspects of the song together. Another thing is, remember that 16th notes feature really prominently in the intense sections of this song. If you look at the melody in the second last bar of the chorus,
It could never be us.
is the first time that we see a repeating 16th note rhythm. What this subtly does is it sets up the post-chorus, which is almost entirely based on repeating 16th notes.
Think we got it, but we made up a dream. 'Cause we got it pretty little, but it could be you.
And then of course the bridge, which features 16th notes and 8th notes alternating.
You and I, 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 you and I. Not like in the movies.
The bridge also includes the first bars of the verse. So what the bridge is doing is it's borrowing from a bunch of different sections to create something entirely new, which is a really wonderful, subtle way to not repeat something outright, but to still include some rhythmic motifs and ideas from the other parts of the song that you would probably notice more subconsciously tying the song together than consciously. And now for my big takeaways, the things I learned from analyzing this song. I read an interview from the producer of this single where he was talking about the production of Don't Kill My Vibe, and he said there was a surplus of ideas. It was just a matter of throwing them all in there. Now this is the same producer who worked on Strangers, and my understanding is that it's just the two of them writing these songs. It sounds like they're going through a really strong period of writing right now where there's lots of ideas flying around, so their opportunistic approach to arranging these songs seems like the only way that they can really get all of this stuff in. And so there are typical formulas that exist to try to craft a song, but you can toss all those away if you can come up with something better. I wanted to look at a few arrangement things that I thought were interesting. Just the use of 3 different chord progressions alone is something that we haven't seen so far in any of our song breakdowns. The Bruno Mars Finesse bridge has a little bit of a change, but it's really just a 2-5-1 turnaround at the end of a chord progression, not like a different chord progression entirely. But the chord progressions in this song, even though they're diatonic, are so different from each other that the song really leans hard on these changing chord progressions as a way to up the intensity for the bigger sections. And then in the first sections of this song, we have a soft kick and an alternating kick,
Just like in the movies.
which first introduced this 16th note rhythm that we're going to be feeling a lot later.
Stranger.
This was a cool way to subtly introduce the faster 16th note rhythms right from the start of the song without it feeling too intense right off the bat. Okay, production of the vocals. This is one of my favorite tricks in the whole song, and something I'd never considered doing before. So your main vocals and harmonies are generally in the center of the mix.
Just like in the movies. It starts to rain and we.
But your post-chorus vocals, when they first happen, are panned super wide and they're dry, there's no reverb on them.
Think we got it, but we made up a dream. 'Cause we got it pretty little, but it could be you. I don't want you, all you want is the one. Going home together to forget we're alone.
So when they first happen, it sort of seems like, oh, this is kind of just a cool contrast. Look where the vocals are out here on the sides. And it does. It feels super fresh, and it feels like a contrast from the chorus section before it. But then at the end of the song, we have a chorus with the vocals in the middle. Then we have a post-chorus after it with the vocals on the side. And then we have an outro where they both happen at the same time. And that reveals the second reason why they're panned to the side. Because when the vocals in the center are happening and the vocals in the side, they would be clashing terribly if they were in the same area. But by panning the post-chorus vocals out to the sides and having the main vocal in the middle, they don't clash at all. This is maybe my favorite trick in the song. Now that soft phasey chord that we have right from the beginning that happens in the verses, it comes back for the last two sections as a way to fill out the arrangement. But instead of just sitting there, the cutoff very slowly opens towards the end, so you get more and more high frequency, and it slowly raises the intensity of the song, leading up to the very end where it cuts off.
It can never be us. Just you and I. Think we got it, but we made up a dream. 'Cause we got it pretty little, but it could be you. I don't want you, all you want is the one. Going home together to forget we're alone. Think we got it, but we made up a dream. 'Cause we got it pretty little, but it could be you. I don't want you, all you want is the one. Going home together to forget we're alone.
Now Now that's just one example of something from early in the song in the intro and verses being used at the end of this song as a way to raise the intensity and also tie the whole song together. The other thing that does this is the arpeggiating bell lead from the first pre-chorus, which doesn't happen again until the third pre-chorus, which is sort of like a parallel section. And then it happens right from there through the end of the song as a way to create a background level of melodic interest. And also because it's moving quickly, it creates a lot of energy towards the end of the song. I find that the end of a song is often difficult to balance because you want to have a lot of aspects from different sections of the song sort of heaping on top of each other, but you don't want it to be too overcluttered. Now the last thing I want to do is point out a few of the things that sort of break convention and are less formulaic. Act 1 sets up a lot of sounds that never happen again. There's the kick and the printer sound, but then there's also the whole first pre-chorus, which never really happens again. There is a third pre-chorus, but it's arranged so differently we don't even get most of those sounds back. In the second verse, there are some sounds like the bass and the drums that didn't happen in the first verse and are just being used after the first chorus to keep the momentum going.
Just like in the movies, too easy to rewrite.
But they never happen again later in the song. At the end of Act 1, there's a 1-bar break. There's not another one of these anywhere in the song. It kind of makes sense because you want to have a pause after the chorus, and there's not really another opportunity where after a big section later in the song, you would want to have a pause. Again, this brings us to opportunism and only using things as they're needed. And then the third pre-chorus where we have these Madeon-esque chords. This chord actually sounds similar to the drop chord, but if you took the LFO on it, so instead of stabbing, it's just sustained. A lot of the opportunism that I'm seeing in this arrangement with different sounds is actually different applications or different variations on similar sounds, because even though everything is different, it's still related. While I was analyzing this, I was talking to a friend of mine and she asked me an interesting question. Does the randomness of the arrangement of the song and flaunting convention hurt the memorability of the song? What I would say is this. A typical pop song formula can do a really good job of introducing the ideas, repeating the ideas, providing contrast, and getting the song into your memory. But in a situation like this, where you have lots and lots of great ideas and you want to try to fit them all in, it's important, I think, to recognize that the formula, while it can be useful, can get in the way of creating something that will transcend those conventions. And the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is having a piece of music that you think is awesome. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. So that's your Music Minute. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can help support me by going to Patreon and donating a small amount of money every time I upload one of these videos. You can help spread the word about it by sharing this video with people that might learn something from it or just enjoy watching it. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for the next song that I should analyze, leave those in the comments and I'll check them out. But otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching.